Welcome to Roll for Crit and our review of KeyForge from Fantasy Flight Games, designed by Richard Garfield of Magic the Gathering fame. It's a collectible card game in which both players take on the roles of archons, fighting for supremacy and for control of special vaults filled with loot. You're sending out creatures and special magical artifacts against each other. It is a card game that is collectible, but the decks are what are being sold, not booster packs, and each deck is completely unique. But before we get into all that goodness, here's how the game actually works.
Each deck will be comprised with a named archon and a specific set deck list. You will not be building decks in advance. The deck you have is the deck you get. The deck will be composed of 3 houses out of a possible 7. These houses will comprise of unique abilities and usually have a theme going along. For example, one theme such as Brobnar is a bit more of the offensive and more about attacking, when something more like the Shadows is more about like stealing. The goal of the game is to forge 3 keys that are these little fun discs here. In order to forge these, you will need to collect amber. At the start of your turn, if you have 6 or more amber, you will discard 6 of them to turn one of those discs over into a key. Your opponent will be trying to do the same while also trying to stall you. First one to flip their 3rd key will be the winner. To do so, you'll be either collecting cards at play and say gather amber, or reaping. Each creature has the ability to either reap or attack, which is their exhaust. Totally not tapping.
It's exhausting. It's different.
The big thing is here, unlike if you think of Magic the Gathering when it's just all your creatures this turn or maybe all your lands, at the start of your turn you have to name one of the houses and you can only play and really interact with cards from that house. So if I want to attack this person, I had to choose either Shadow or the Brobnar here. I couldn't use both of them unless there's some weird cards to say otherwise, which means you have to be very careful with how you use your resources.
Pretty straightforward. Really, I think the big unique mechanics in this are the fact that, as you said, you're going for amber, not necessarily strictly battling your opponent, as well as the fact that you have those different houses and you have to decide each turn which ones you're going to use. So how, as you're a seasoned Magic vet, I mean, we've played so many trading card games between the two of us in our lifetimes, but what do you think as a card game itself? Does the gameplay in this differentiate itself to a level that you find interesting, that you think makes it stand out from the rest of us?
Well, when I think of a lot of other board games, we even commented on this during one game. Now, you think that when you have a larger board state, or even if the opponent has an empty one, you're like, oh, I'm left open to attacks. So you think like Yu-Gi-Oh! Getting life points, Magic getting attacked. But that isn't the thing. In fact, it's like, okay, maybe I'll reap, or maybe I won't because they didn't even choose their house.
Yeah, no, it is very interesting because, like you said, you're in this headspace, I think, when you first play it of, oh, I need to put things on the ground, I need to fight you. And there would be times where like, oh, I don't have any creatures out, I'm defenseless. But then I realized, oh, it matters a little, but it's not like if your opponent has 5 creatures and you have none, they're not going to kill you. Like their creatures might not actually be good for generating amber. They might, maybe indirectly they help them to do that eventually, but you might have cards in your hand that are just actions, maybe are really good at getting amber, and you might have some kind of combo you can play that makes that happen for you all in one turn, and have it, you can catch up really fast if you feel like you're behind. So I thought that was really interesting, just that different headspace that you're in really changes it. And even more so with having to decide which house to use, I think is really fun because you have kind of 3 different styles of play in your deck, and on every turn, that could be a different method of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Yeah, I think the game is very well paced as well. The decks are 36 cards, which does seem small.
37 if you include the card list.
37 if you include the card list, which the front of the box does. It tells you it's a 37-card deck. And I feel like, depending on how familiar you are with the game and which cards you have, games could be longer or shorter. But I think having 3 keys is like the perfect pacing. It feels like not too much, not too little. It's just the right amount to like have a little bit of suspense when you're playing. So I felt like that was balanced pretty well. And that is one of the of the big concerns everybody had, I think, going into this was balance and how do you deal with what if some decks are just worse than others. We had some interesting plays in that some decks we thought, well, maybe this one doesn't seem that good, but against a certain other type of deck, it can shine, which I think is true of other CCGs, but because you're not building them yourself, it feels like more impactful here.
The usual strategy is if strategy A starts working, you think strategy B will start working, then C will be B, and so on and so forth. But when you get into a lot of the build your own deck games, I mean, talk to any Magic player.
I won't.
Well, too late, you're talking to me.
No.
But you'll see people saying like, no, this is the modern deck. This is the standard deck. And sometimes, you know, if one card gets printed, like Jace the Mind Sculptor, the top 8 decks will all be using the same thing with a variation, maybe one card.
We're in early days. It sounds like the meta, nothing's really emerged as of this recording.
As of this recording.
That's like super strong or super weak, it seems like. Yeah, and that's as someone who generally I shy away from collectible card games because not only do I not want to spend the money to get the best cards, but honestly, a lot of it is just about the time and the research that has to go into it to making the best decks. Even if you just play casually, you still want to kind of, have a little bit of competition against even your friends. So for me, this format is honestly feels like a godsend that there is no worrying about that. No one has to worry about it. I sit down with a deck. I know it's going to work. There might be better ones, there might be worse ones, but the work has been done for me, and I found that really refreshing.
I will say that initially I was a bit lukewarm to this because the randomness and coming from Magic, I like the idea of maybe looking at, what if I made a deck surrounding more of like dinosaurs or maybe something a little bit weird, not as straightforward competitive. And this, you can't do that. And I still have that feeling a little bit. But I will say, after playing some games, I really enjoyed it a lot because I didn't have to think like, okay, what if I took this card out and swapped it with this one? It was really just, all right, pass the next deck. Next deck.
The fact that, it's $10 a deck, which I think is like just cheap enough that I could easily just be like, yeah, let me drop $20. I'll get a couple decks and we can trade them around with each other. I really enjoy that. And yeah, definitely, if you are someone who you like that deck building aspect, yeah, it's not there.
The decks themselves, I think they're interesting to buy, but going on that uniqueness, one of the big problems could be if you do play enough, you may be like, I really enjoy these 3 houses. You won't know what houses you're purchasing, so either you got to trade or buy. So you're not going to have to worry. You mentioned earlier spending money on getting the good cards, a single. So technically, that's not going to happen. But there could be buying decks.
Every deck has a unique name, randomly generated by an algorithm.
Let's show some of the fun ones we have here.
We've got...
You want to read?
I don't know if they'll be able to see them on camera. We've got the Sri of Bookholm.
You read all the...
D. Miles, the Pub Prodigal. Octavio Honorable Buster Holgerson, one of the worst ones.
Oh, yeah.
Aine of Adamberry. That's a pretty good one. Patrizio Barmount Countess. Some of them will make more sense than others. Actually, I love that aspect of it as long as we're on that right now, because I feel like that is such a small thing, but it goes such a long way in making it feel like your deck is yours. You care about it more.
Well, I was looking up the stuff we were talking about before about whether things are more powerful, are there people complaining about one house?
Yeah.
I forget what the exact keyword is when I did the Googles, but it turned out that all I could find was not about like powerful card. It was like best named deck. Best name. Like everyone's just talking about the names of the decks they found.
It has this quality to it like Pokemon. Like you want to it feels like this is my, if you find a deck, and I think that's what's so special about this game. If you find a deck you really like, no one else can make this deck. This is my deck. Now we're going to forge our crits and misses for KeyForge. Crits. The random deck format eliminates the overpriced singles market, makes it easy to just pick up a deck and play with anyone nearby, and it's fun to open them up and see what weird names you get.
We find that the pricing combined with having the locked-in deck lists actually work out perfectly without making you feel like you spent too much money, but still getting a lot of fun in a small box.
Each of the 7 houses have interesting and unique feeling themes to them, and having to choose between them on your turns make each time you play the game a little bit different and exciting.
Coming from playing lots of Magic, having each house have its own play style really can be important to players, as if this does grow, people will want to say, I am a Shadows player.
The goal of the game being to collect amber and forge keys makes it feel a little bit different from other card games where you're just trying to attack the other player, and creates a bit of tension, a good balancing act, and some back and forth plays between each player.
Misses. Because of the unique game system, you may have to trade or buy for decks to get the houses you want. And just because singles won't be expensive, doesn't mean there won't be a good card causing one specific deck style to go up in price significantly.
While the format eliminates a lot of the hurdles of traditional collectible card games, some of them are still there in one form or another.
I have fond memories building some weird Magic decks around maybe some strange or maybe unorthodox themes or strategies. You can't really do that because all decks are locked, which can be a little disappointing if you always wondered, what if I built more around thieves and humans?
Yeah, you're kind of stuck with what you get is what you get, for better and worse.
With any CCG, especially as more sets are added, card interaction can sometimes be confusing, and it means that the rules have to be very clear in how they're worded. We found several moments that we had issues with how the cards were written, so much so that it seemed that they were different than what was actually in the rulebook.
You've got a collectible card game and a game from Fantasy Flight with a lot of different keywords, and yeah, there are some, for the most part the rules play out pretty smoothly, but there are those hiccups, and I can only imagine as the game grows, they're going to get more hiccupy.
Fantasy Flight's twist on the CCG style with their unique game KeyForge is frankly, in our opinion, a success. The decks themselves are frankly very well priced at only $10. For that you get a complete deck which is pretty much tournament worthy because you can change them up. The cards themselves, we found that most of them work very well. While you may not get the full houses you want, most of the decks are still very fun to play.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to introduce this game to other people. And I feel like it's so easy and so accessible because you don't have to warn them about, oh, I made you this deck, or here's the starter deck that's okay, but let me change it for you. It's just, I can just go down to the store and just grab a couple and say, hey, here's how to play. It's pretty simple. Let's just try it. Like, that's exciting.
I think the fact that you were, as of this recording, this is before PAX Unplugged, you're thinking of actually joining the tournament.
I kind of was.
Hey, that's more than any other game.
Because you know, at the bare minimum, like, this deck has a chance. Whereas me making my own deck, I would never enter any tournament because, and if I did, I'd have to look online, oh, which cards are the best, which cards aren't as good. Like, this, it's just so much more of a chance that you feel competitive in it. And it's fun.
As of now, I want to know, because I'd love to hear all your picks too. Mm-hmm. Your favorite 3 houses, like what would be your deck?
I mean,
as of now,
I love the Untamed. Mm-hmm. I like their weird creatures, and I like the art of those guys. That's another thing. The lore, some of the lore it's not really in your face, but I think it's kind of cool what they have. Shadows are kind of good. I kind of like a lot of them. There aren't many. Logos is I really like Logos. I mean, they let you draw more, so that's always good.
As you know, in any card game, draw is good.
Drawing is good. What about you?
My Sanctum and Dis were the ones I really enjoyed a lot of.
Dis is good.
Dis has that perfect amount of control, while the Sanctum is very defensive, which I enjoy. But the third one I think could fit. A lot of them fit very well. Were fun. Dis, like I said, it's not Dis. I mean, Logos, drawing. Mm-hmm. How could you say no to that?
Yeah.
But the Shadows, I mean, in one game, you pulled this amazing victory with all these shadow cards. Next thing, I thought I was doing pretty well. Next thing you know, you're like, and all of a sudden I lost like half my amber.
Yeah, that can be pretty good. Mars is interesting. I kind of like them, but they're also I feel like they're a little trickier to do well. We were really I definitely would recommend this to anyone if you have even a little bit of an interest in this type of game, this head-to-head 2-player game. I just think this is honestly a fantastic one.
Well, the $10 decks are going to be perfect for the holiday season because it's not going to hurt the wallet, and it's perfect size or whatever the occasion may be. Unfortunately, the starter set, which has all the little chips and stuff, I think that was a bit harder for us to find.
It's hard to find, but the good news is you really don't need it. Other than those rules, you can make a lot of this with just your own dice and tokens or whatever you have, coins lying around. Just buy a couple of the decks and go to town and have a good time.
And of course, like many other CCGs, as of this recording, there could be more formats added with rules. We're going over more of the basic stuff and the little core things, like especially tournament play. We know there's some things about bidding on decks or maybe playing with opponents' decks. That is, you're going to have to be, if you're more into tournament play, you should look up that. We're right now just looking at if you're just going to sit at home and play with your friends.
Yeah, if you are watching this 3 years in the future and everything we've said is now obsolete, please leave a comment below and tell us that we're wrong. I'm sure we'll read it and be moved by it. Or if you're watching this in the present, like we said, tell us your favorite factions, some really good deck names that you've got. We definitely want to hear those. We would love to hear about all that stuff right down below. And while you're down there, you can follow us on social media or on Facebook, Instagram, etc. in the description.
Until then, I'm House Will.
And I'm House Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit review.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more board game content. Every little bit helps.
Please, we gotta eat.